The children of the sacramental programme have come to my mind over the last few days because of this feast and because they were due to make their first Holy Communion here in St. Catherine's next Sunday and the Sunday after. And you can just imagine how disappointed they must be. I know that a lot of you, most of you at home, are struggling not being able to receive the Eucharist, and it's particularly emphatic on a day when we're celebrating Corpus Christi, the body and blood of Christ. But imagine how disappointed those children must be, because to receive Jesus in the Eucharist for the first time is pretty special, isn't it? Maybe you can remember your own first Holy Communion day. And to be honest, some of those children may have been looking forward more to dressing up in their outfit or for the big party that would be taking place whenever that will be taking place, whether they're with their family or with their friends as well, and all the other children on the programme. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to enjoy those things, because after all, we do those things to remind us, and especially to remind the children, what a special day it is. We don't want such a special day to pass unnoticed, so we need all the trappings of what comes with a big celebration. We need the special clothes, we need the party, we need it to be a different day to any other day, because it will remind the children, when they look back throughout their lives, even if they didn't understand at the time, they'll remind them as they're growing up what an important, special day was. There was something about that day that was worth celebrating. So that's why we do make a fuss of First Holy Communion, and why it's not wrong to have all those extra celebrations as well. But of course, the central reason why it is so important is the feast we're particularly celebrating today, Corpus Christi, the wonderful gift of the Eucharist. As Father John said at the beginning of Mass, Christ gets stuck in, he enters our world. And as the second person of the Trinity, he didn't just empty himself there and become one of us, and then that was it. That wasn't the only way he made himself vulnerable. He then went on to leave us the gift of the Eucharist. He realised that we needed nourishing with his body and blood. We needed something physical, we needed something real, something tangible that we would be able to celebrate and be nourished by. So, having made himself vulnerable by becoming one of us and dying on the cross and rising again, he then made himself even more vulnerable, because imagine, he's in the fragile form of bread and wine. He allows himself to be held in the priest's hands and to be broken in the priest's hands. He takes such a risk every single Mass, because that's just who Jesus is. He becomes vulnerable for us. He makes himself a gift for us. He comes to us, enters the messiness of our life. He feels with us, he grieves with us, he suffers with us. He understands where we're coming from. And if you think about it as well, he doesn't even make himself that precious, although, I have to say, just in case someone gets the wrong end of the stick, he is, of course, very precious, and it's a very precious sacrament. But if you think about it, Jesus could have made himself any other form that's sturdier, stronger than bread and wine, but he takes such a risk in that fragile form at every Mass. He teaches us how to love by becoming so vulnerable and fragile. But it doesn't just stop there, because the Eucharist is awe-inspiring as well. Because when we celebrate the Eucharist, when that bread and wine is transformed into the body and blood of Christ, it's not just any old thing that's happening, any old event. It's not a remembering, it's not just a reenactment of something that happened in the past. It's not a different sacrifice every time. It's the very same sacrifice that happened 2,000 years ago. Christ's passion, his death on the cross at Calvary, and him rising from the dead, the resurrection, all that one event is made present every single Mass. And that makes it a glimpse of heaven on earth. That is awe-inspiring, mind-blowing, overwhelming, whatever phrase, word you want to say. It should inspire awe in us to think that that is what is happening at Mass. And it's because that it's that is happening that is what guarantees that we are nourished by the Eucharist. It guarantees that it is the body and blood of Christ, because it's not just a reenactment, it is the real, true presence of Christ in the Eucharist. What an amazing gift that is. And that is why this feast is so important. That's why the gift of the Eucharist is so humbling and amazing. That's why we make a fuss of First Holy Communion. And that's why I'm going to get out of the way now so that you can witness the main event.